You're now locked in to HBCU Pulse. We're the #1 outlet for HBCU life, talking about everything that's important to our culture, from on-campus issues to politics and what's trending on the yard. We always keep that same energy. Don't touch that dial. You're listening to HBCU Pulse Radio. You're listening to the HBCU Sports Playbook on HBCU Pulse Radio.
What's going on, everybody? This is Randall Barnes, the founder of HBCU Pulse and the host of HBCU Pulse Radio, in the building for another special edition of the show. On today, we are back. We took a week break to make things happen, but we're here. It's November, and we're ready for some football. Arielle, how you doing today?
Doing pretty good. For me, it's kind of been a 2-week break. I went on a whole homecoming tour, and then, you got sick and scared me. So I'm glad to be back. I'm glad that you're okay and we can catch everybody up, because we're kind of in that closing season where we're really trying to see who's going to go against who. And I'm excited to talk about it today. Yeah.
Hey, I want to say this real quick before we start. Black men go to the doctor. I was one of the black men that was sort of avoiding the doctor, because how I look at it is like, you don't want to be in a situation where you're doing bad and then the doctor says you're doing bad. This is what's wrong with you. But you have to go to know something's wrong with you to prevent it. And I learned that, you know what I'm saying? And I'm a changed man now. You feel me? I ate spinach for lunch. That ain't that crazy? Anyway, I didn't have those fries. So we getting, but I'm not a football player. I'm not an athlete. I like to be honest. But we want to start the show on a bit of a somber note in honoring Eric N. Moore. Mr. Eric Moore passed away recently. He was the founder of Onnidan and a true HBCU media pioneer. He really led the internet revolution. You know how we look at stats and, we read off what's going on online. In 1995, he started Onnidan. And Onnidan is the website that we use to see the scores and the schedule. We're going to use it this episode. He was the trailblazer of that. He worked as the director of communications at Bowie State University in 1984, and he started the Onnidan Group in 1986 as a source for sports information for HBCUs. Onnidan was the first HBCU sports website that covered holistically HBCU sports, and they still do today. And the thing about it is that they put up all the scores. ESPN didn't have all the scores. You see a lot of these other sports purveyors like Fox Sports and CBS, they don't have all the scores. Onnidan has the scores for every HBCU sports game, and it helps us out as we try to cover all HBCUs. So he's a pioneer. There would not be an HBCU Pulse or a Randall Barnes in this space without Onnidan. There would be an HBCU Gameday and HBCUsports.com. None of us would be here if it was not for Mr. Eric Moore. And we extend our condolences to his family, to the Onnidan community, and all of the folks, the great people that work at Onnidan. We extend our love and support to you all in the loss of such a legend, and we will continue in his legacy as we move on. All right. So let's talk about Jackson State College Gameday. They hosted College Gameday on Saturday. We're going to get through it really quickly, and then we'll talk about the game, and Arielle will lead in that. So ESPN was on the campus of Jackson State University. My boy Pat McAfee was out there. He was suited and booted like he was going to coronation, and he loved that chant, fired up, J-State fired up. He loved that chant. It was a lot of good energy, a lot of beautiful black people, a lot of great stuff going on. The signs were hilarious. It was one sign, Arielle, that said Pat McAfee got a Boosie fade. I'm like, they gonna let that go on ESPN? That was hilarious. It's like, Pat McAfee got a Boosie fade. They kept showing it, and he sort of got a Boosie fade a little bit. It's crazy. So it was great. So I want to go through the numbers. So they averaged 1.89 million viewers through the 3 hours of the show. It was the number 2 show on cable for Saturday. It had a 0.52 rating in the coveted 18 to 49 demographic that advertisers love. So listen, it did really well. And it got 2.3 million views in the final hour. And that final hour featured an interview with Deion Sanders and also Stephen A. Smith, Winston-Salem State University alumni, the OG. He was on there and gave his picks. He was the celebrity guest picker for College Gameday. He ain't paid enough, all right? But also, this is the best 9-week start for College Gameday since 2009, and this episode of Jackson State aided in that. So it was a good stuff. And, we showed up and showed out, and it was good attention to a point. And I don't have time to get into that. for HBCUs. I think the pros are great. Pat McAfee was amazing. I'm a big fan of his, especially as a wrestling fan. I think he's a superstar and his energy is infectious. And it was great to see that energy on Jackson State's campus. And Kirk Herbstreit is great at his job. Like, just from breaking down the HBCU games to the FBS games, he's really great at just breaking down the game and telling you the story and who are the key players in such a succinct time. I think he's amazing. But the only things that I didn't really like is that you were on Jackson State's campus and you didn't cover none of FCS, nor did you cover the SWAC in totality. That's all I wanted. Like, it's cool you covered the 1974 Walter Payton, dream team at Jackson State that went 7-3 and 4-2 in the SWAC. They have 3 Hall of Famers in Walter Payton, Robert Brazile, and Jackie Slater. But I would have loved if they covered more of HBCU culture. I get you had the Alphas and the Deltas strolling. I get it. I understand that has to be a part of it. And ESPN love the Greeks. They love the Greeks. If you watch Celebration Bowl, are they going to tell you who was Greek? But I just wish they could have covered the culture of Jackson State, like just the city of Jackson, how they support Jackson State, even a little bit of Southern and the human jukebox and the sonic boom of the South. Like, I really wish we could have got more of that from ESPN. And I honestly, Arielle, I did not like at all how ESPN College Gameday came on campus and they were pushing the narrative that Deion Sanders is going to lead Jackson State for a Power 5 institution. They asked him that, and he finally was like, I have no plans to leave. I mean, I'm going to entertain it, but I have no plans to leave. But also, they had like a segment where they spun a wheel and they talked about it in front of Jackson State fans. I just think that was totally uncalled for. If he leaves, he leaves. But I just think that was totally uncalled for. And I think ESPN has to do better. I could go on and on, but what I will say is that y'all need to go watch Roland Martin's video where he reacted to College Game Day being at Jackson State University. And I agree with every sentiment that he said, especially as a Black media purveyor and a Black media entrepreneur, and also working with HBCU League Pass Plus, which Roland Martin does work with Urban Edge and HBCU League Pass Plus as well. Great breakdown, and I totally agree with everything he said. And there's certain things I can't get into because of time for this broadcast, but definitely go check that out because I agree. So let's talk about the D1 scores in totality for Saturday. So Jackson State defeated Southern 35-0 in the Boombox Classic. The game was on ESPN3. Okay, it wasn't on ESPN. That was just game day. It was on ESPN3. But they won though, Boombox Classic. So North Carolina A&T defeated Campbell 45-38. Great game. Arielle was there. All right. Villanova defeated Hampton 24-10. Morgan State defeated South Carolina State 41-14 in a shocker. Grambling defeated Alcorn 35-6 in a shocker. Louisiana Christian defeated Langston 39-14. Murray State defeated Tennessee State 19-3. Prairie View A&M defeated Bethune-Cookman 58-48. Texas Southern defeated Lincoln of California, which is not an HBCU, 37-2. North Carolina Central defeated Delaware State 28-21. Howard defeated Norfolk State 49-21. And FAMU defeated University of Arkansas Pine Bluff 27-6 on their homecoming. So Arielle, what were some games that you were looking at in the D1 picture?
Yeah, so I went, like I was saying, on the whole homecoming tour. Congratulations to Clark Atlanta for winning their game against Savannah State. I was telling Randall I really thought they were going to lose, but they surprised me, pulled something over my eyes, however the saying goes. Then I went to Spellhouse for Morehouse and Benedict, and that's really all you have to say, Morehouse and Benedict. I'm sorry, Morehouse, at least y'all had a great homecoming. Then I got to come home to my actual homecoming, A&T versus Campbell, and I'm so glad that they won 45-38, but I hate the behind win. And that's how A&T has been playing. And I understand, they're still kind of new. This is their second year, but I'm just glad they're finding their footing somehow. There's still a little bit of things that they could work on, but we have to talk about these other games because now we're getting into the race where we really need to see who's going to the Celebration Bowl, who are these dominating teams. And after the past 2 weeks being gone, everything has just gone haywire in the MEAC. So let's start with this October 22nd game, South Carolina State versus North Carolina Central. Won in a very close game, 26-24. I wish this wasn't a game that Central lost because this win would have made their trip to the Celebration Bowl permanent. It would have been stamped in history.
three. But of course, they had to make things difficult for me. It was a great game going back and forth. And what I could really say was a battle between a running offense and a passing offense. We all know Central is really deep into their running game, especially their tailbacks, and they have a very depth of line when it comes to their running backs. And then you look at South Carolina State, they're all passing. So this is kind of like key for other teams that didn't do good this year or they only have 3 games left in their season, what they really want to hone into. So Central struck first 13 seconds into the game with Collier on a 60-yard run to the end zone. I love this duo. It's an automatic threat, and I know South Carolina State knew that. What I also liked about this game is that there were hardly any moments where they weren't answering each other. It was a straight shootout, which I feel like we missed this season from all HBCUs competing competitively. But South Carolina State, after that 13-second touchdown, ran up 2 scores. And by the end of the second quarter, South Carolina State was up 20-14. And this is the first time, I believe, since Central has been on this trip that they have come from behind and haven't scored at least over 10 or more points within the first quarter. So you already know South Carolina State is on a really, really good track. By the third quarter, Central was frozen after one more touchdown 2 minutes into the quarter and a field goal less than 5 minutes going into the fourth. This is where it became a defensive battle and where Richards wasn't safe anymore. You think of this quarterback and he's over 200 pounds, over 6 foot, very barely, and just he's dominating, and he's used to scoring 20 plus points in you before the half, but now he's facing a team that knows how to pressure him and that knows how to get him out the pocket. His pocket is very secure, and he usually has 3 seconds or more to throw the ball. At the fourth quarter, he had less than 2 statistically. And so the offensive line not holding up allowed a forced interception late in field goal range, which cost them the game in the fourth quarter. And I mean, there were other things. There were 2 touchdowns from holding penalties that had to be taken back. And there was also that interception. But what Randall, and it's so funny because now everything you say is coming to fruition. And I literally have to give you your props, and maybe you can make predictions for what the games are going to look like later. But missed field goals, just like how the Panthers were defeated by the Falcons, are key to actually winning games. If they never would have missed those 2 field goals, perfect game, they would have won regardless of the touchdown that South Carolina State scored late. And so it ended up Davius Richards went 11 for 24, 170 yards, 1 interception, and 2 touchdowns at the end of the game, which is pretty inconsistent for him to be a MEAC favorite. But the rest of these 3 teams that they go up against, which includes Norfolk State, I think they could get back up to the top. But after that weekend, I was solely confused about where this race is going. Then after that, 2 more quick analysis. We have Howard, which is now number 1. They're at the top of the MEAC. They defeated Delaware State in 35-17. And then they defeated Norfolk State in a 49-21. And when I was looking at this, I was like, this can't be so. This isn't the Howard that I was giving predictions for, that I needed to see a really great quarterback and I need to see more depth in their receivers, because they hadn't figured out their running game, but they really didn't have receivers that were able to get down the field and actually mesh with their quarterback. But Howard decided to try something different by balancing their running game and their passing game, even though they were more dominant in running. And hey, it's worked. And now they're at the top of the MEAC. They went for 3 touchdowns by Quentin Williams, who averaged 175 yards. And they held Norfolk State to 229 throughout the whole game. Howard, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That's all I can say. You have my respect. And if this is how it's going to go, like I said, it's anybody's game in the MEAC. But lastly, I want to talk about the upset of Morgan State blowing out South Carolina State 41-14. Now, Morgan State isn't the greatest team. They don't have the greatest record either. But if you can cause South Carolina State to go scoreless in not 1, but 2 quarters, the third and the fourth, I say you deserve some recognition. They led South Carolina State all the way into halftime by 3 points. It was 14-17. Then after that, they went through the fourth quarter, scoring 24 unanswered points against South Carolina State. And South Carolina State has some really good players. They have BJ Davis, who had 8 tackles and 1 for a loss, and Duane Nicholas. But that didn't work for them. And like you also said, defense doesn't win games. They can stop, they can get you on the field, they can get you going, they get you time back on the clock, but your offense has to be ready. And so looking at these scores and coming up now, and I know we'll discuss later how everybody's looking in these standings, the MEAC is everywhere. These inconsistencies can be proven that it's anybody's game. I wish and I want, and I think we both want Central to be the team that faces Jackson State, but they keep making these little inconsistencies and not taking the points where they need to and staying within their rhythm. We really don't know who it's going to be, but these past 3 games have been my favorite. And I wish I would have watched them, but I'm glad the MEAC is proven to have some competition somewhere.
I love it. I think that was an amazing breakdown. So let's get into D2 and what's going on. So for the sake of time and also the fact we did an amazing Twitter Spaces, D2 HBCU Football, Coach Thomas and I, we come together thanks to D2 HBCU Football to do a Twitter Spaces every Sunday. Wasn't my idea, but I wish it was. It was an amazing idea. He is great, Tuskegee alum, so we making it happen. So I talked about a lot of the different games that went on in D2 this past weekend, and I went sort of in depth on what happened with Fort Valley and Savannah State because I was at that game. But I might do another video just really giving my thoughts on that and really a bigger preview to the Fountain City Classic. But for the sake of time, I want to really focus on Chowan beating Virginia Union in a huge upset, 26-21. But I want to say that Benedict defeated Clark Atlanta 49-20. Tuskegee defeated Kentucky State 28-7. Those are your 2 SIAC championship finalists. We're not going to get too much into them because we'll talk about them on next week because the SIAC championship is coming up next week. Benedict, of course, you've been able to see their games on HBCU League Pass Plus. Tuskegee, they have Coach Ruffin down there, and they're back being dominant, and they pulled off an amazing win against the University of West Alabama. Well, let's talk about Chowan. So Chowan is a PWI in an HBCU conference. And oftentimes, when you have PWI, so predominantly white institutions in HBCU conferences, they don't really do much. Like, this is sort of there. You just sort of wonder why they're there. It's like, Spring Hill, when it comes to the SIAC, like, they're good in like, other sports, but football, basketball, Spring Hill didn't have a football team. Basketball, they're beatable. But with Chowan has been actually really good this season. And I was like, they've been cool. All right, when you play Bowie, you're going to lose. When you play Virginia Union, you're going to lose. We ain't worried about Chowan. Y'all doing good. I'm happy for y'all. You know what I'm saying? Y'all get basically our cousins. You know what I mean? But no, y'all not going to win. They beat Bowie last week. This loss by Virginia Union and then Chowan beating Bowie has Chowan in the lead in the CIAA North. And if they beat Elizabeth City State University this weekend, they're going to the CIAA championship against Fayetteville State. And I am shocked. I am perplexed by this. Now, Fayetteville State did beat Chowan earlier in the season, but no one expected this. And for a lot of HBCU alumni, we want to see HBCUs on top. It's nothing personal, but in an HBCU conference, you want to see HBCUs lead that conference and not predominantly white institutions. So a lot of folks are bent out of shape about this, and it looks like Chowan, it's going to be a little battle. It's going to be interesting heading into next week. But let's talk about what happened. Because what happened? What robbery occurred? Like, are we all dreaming? Is it a nightmare? What happened? Well, we're going to start with Bowie. Chowan beat Bowie 21-15. Now, Bowie, they've had an okay season, but they're not going to the championship. Virginia Union beat them. They had a very interesting upset loss against Shaw earlier in the season. And, Coach Damon Wilson is now at Morgan State. So I think a lot of what made them great was Damon Wilson's coaching. But get this. Chowan held Bowie to 92 yards rushing, and they have a 129-yard average for rushing on the season. That's crazy. That's defense because you got them off their game. Then Rashard McKee, who's the starting quarterback for Chowan, that man liked that, man. In this Bowie game, he was 17 for 33, 277 yards, and 3 touchdowns on Bowie's defense. And he threw a 73-yard touchdown pass, got Chowan on the scoreboard. Threw a 63-yard touchdown pass to seal the win and the upset. Then we talked about Arielle. Bowie missed the field goal and an extra point, left 4 points on the board. So you look at that score, 15 plus 4 is 19. So now you're in a situation where maybe you get a defensive stop, you kick a field goal, and now you win 22-21. In sports, with free throws, they matter in basketball. With the missed field goal kicks, the missed extra points, you're leaving points on the field. And in close games, that matters. And Bowie didn't get blown out. It was a good game, but he lost. And I wasn't expecting that. When I saw that, who were off last week, when I saw that, I was like, huh? Nah, okay, it's cool. Bowie's been struggling. They're going to be back. You know, they're going to be good. They still have a good team. They're going to be good next year. This just was an off season. It happens. The Golden State Warriors have struggled. The Buccaneers are struggling this year in football. So, listen, it's going to be good. The champions have that happen sometimes. They got to rebuild, all right? They got to find a Jordan Poole. You feel me? So, I'm like, Virginia Union, they're the team for now. Right? They got Jada Byers, who should be a Harlan Hill Trophy candidate. He should be a Harlan Hill Trophy winner. He should be the first HBCU student to win. So I'm like, man, listen, Jada Byers ran all up on Valdosta, who's struggling this year. Got 300 yards on him. Like, he ain't a quarterback, he a running back. He ran for all those yards. So I'm like, man, listen, Jada Byers is going to run through Chowan, and then he's going to keep running until he stopped at the CIAA championship, then in the playoffs. That's when he's going to stop running. But he did stop. He stopped. They stopped him short of the end zone. He didn't score a touchdown. Hate to say it. Hate to see it. They held him to 109 rushing yards, no touchdowns. And get this. This is his lowest rush total in games where he's rushed over 20 attempts. So when he's rushed 20 times, he's scored a touchdown. He didn't score a touchdown this time, and this is the first time he didn't have a touchdown, and this is the lowest rush total on those many attempts. Now, his lowest rush total was against Virginia University of Lynchburg, which was 98, but they're playing Virginia University of Lynchburg. Come on. It's not like he was in the game in the fourth quarter. Oh, it's a close game. Let me run this in. No, he was sitting down. He was enjoying the game. He probably had some popcorn, probably had a water. He got to be healthy. You know what I'm saying? Probably had some green apples. So he's just over there just enjoying the game. You know, he probably was on his phone talking. You know what I mean? Come on. Like, it's Virginia University of Lynchburg. We love y'all, but come on, man. Let's be real. But this game was actually competitive, and they held him to that. I think HBCU Gameday and Stephen Gaither said this. They made Jada Byers look human, because some of these statistics he put up this year, it's like, dude, like, are you in the NFL already? Like what's going on? But Chowan was able, with that rush defense that held Bowie to 92 rushing yards, they were able to contain the hottest offensive player really in HBCU football this side of Shedeur Sanders. And I'm like, what? I honestly couldn't believe it, Arielle, because my whole entire thing is that this was Virginia Union's year. And they're going to the playoffs. I think that they beat Virginia State, but you never know, because you don't know how much this loss could hurt them, because this sort of ruined the perfect season for them. But I think they're going to beat Virginia State, and they're going to go to the playoffs. And they still do have a chance to make it to the CIAA championship. But the only thing is this. They got to count on Elizabeth City to beat Chowan. And y'all, that ain't going to happen. That ain't gonna happen. I'm gonna tell you the reason why. And maybe it could. And I would be wrong. I would take it. If you on YouTube and let me know. All right. I will take it, because I don't mind being wrong. But y'all, they're 2-7. Elizabeth City's 2-7. Now, granted, they did battle with Bowie. Bowie won 36-29 on last week. They gave Bowie a fight. But Chowan holds their opponents to 19 points per game. Elizabeth City averages 14 points per game. Elizabeth City holds their opponents to 34 points per game. And hold is sort of in quotations. Hold. Hold their opponent to 34 points per game. Chowan averages 21. They don't even got to score 34 points. They just got to score 21. And Elizabeth City is not good at that. And then Chowan is a better rushing team, a better passing team, a better defensive team. They have McCray out there. They have Rashad McKee out there. And he's just dope. I think he's in his pocket right now. And I think he wants to shock the world. So I just don't believe that Elizabeth City is going to be able to pull this off. Just looking at the numbers. Now, the numbers, the stats, and the eye test is two totally different things. Maybe Elizabeth City goes out there and they say, you know what? We're going to shock the world, or we're going to have an upset. And I don't count them out totally. But looking at it from a rational perspective, you cannot rationally believe that Chowan is going to lose to Elizabeth City. So they got it. Now, Fayetteville State is on them. Fayetteville State is a great team. Hopefully, Fayetteville State continues to do their thing. I think they have a very comfortable lead in the CIAA South. But Chowan is here. And that's going to make the CIAA championship very interesting. So D2 is looking interesting going into championship week. You got Tuskegee and Benedict. You have the newcomer versus the old guys that's been here before. Tuskegee is one of the best HBCU football programs in history. Then you have Chowan, a white school, going up against most likely Fayetteville State, which is Fayetteville State that continuously lost to Bowie. Fayetteville State that was always the runner-up. Fayetteville State that is great at basketball. They have everything it takes to get players in the league like Joshua Williams, and they have a great football team. But Damon Wilson and Bowie these past few years has always eluded them. Maybe it's their time, but we'll see. But it's going to be interesting seeing the CIAA Twitter takes because Chowan is going to the championship. Unless Elizabeth City does something. We'll pray for him, okay? We'll send out a prayer for him. We'll do something in Bible study for him because they're gonna need God, okay? So let's talk about, Arielle, our games of the week. So I'm going to stick on D2 really just for the sake of time, and I'll start off. Fort Valley and Albany is my game of the week. Fort Valley had a very tough loss to Savannah State. I want to point out just one thing with that game. So Fort Valley was poised to win that game. They were going into the fourth quarter, winning 17-7, and Savannah State scored 21 points in the fourth quarter, 2 touchdowns and a fumble recovery. But they only won 28-24, so it wasn't just a straight blowout win, right? They had to come back and win. Fort Valley, I think, was the better team. But the big thing is decision making. And like you said, when it came to South Carolina State, North Carolina Central, and like I was talking about with Bowie, they missed an extra point try, and then they missed the field goal. Fort Valley made a terrible decision, going for a 4th down conversion, trying to go for a touchdown because they were in the red zone on their first drive instead of going for the points. If you go for the points, the game is 28-27. You don't put the game in the referee's hands because Arielle, I know I talked to you yesterday. It wasn't a touchdown. That like the Kelvin Durham throw that we thought was a touchdown. It wasn't a touchdown. He didn't have possession of the ball. And I'm gonna be real with my team. I'm a real sports fan. You're a real sports fan. You know what I'm saying? So it's like we're gonna be real with our teams. Like you lost, and the reason why you lost is not because of the referees in that instance. Although you put it in their hands. You lost because you made a terrible decision and you let Savannah State back in. And Savannah State, they wanted to show they had fight. And it wasn't personal because they went after Albany State too, but Albany State knows how to close out games. So in this game with Fort Valley and Albany State beat Fort Valley 57-0 last year. And we know what it was for. We know that Albany State had a bigger motivation than football, and we salute them, right? Especially in this time, you know? But Fort Valley is a blue blood in the SIAC, just like Albany State. That's our rival. There's not too much football analysis that I really can do right now because it's all about pride at this point. We know Kelvin Durham's that guy. Emmanuel Wilson is probably the best running back in the SIAC. Handle business. I think Albany State is the most vulnerable that they've been in the past 7 years. And we got them in 2016 with a comeback victory. Fort Valley has to do their job. Mess up their playoff chances like Savannah State messed up ours. Because Savannah State show fight. Show fight. Don't go down there and get blown out. This is the most talented team that Fort Valley has had in the 7 years I've been a part of the Fort Valley community. I started in 2015, graduated 2019, been an alumni for almost 3 years. This is the most talented team that we've had. We've had talented players, but from offense to defense, like this is honestly one, especially on the offensive side, this is one of the most talented teams that I've seen. So many weapons. Capitalize on it because we don't know what next year will be. And Coach Sean Gibbs, the North Carolina A&T Aggie, last thing I'll say is make good calls, kick the field goal, because Albany State will. Kick the field goal. That's all I got to say. Arielle, tell us about your game of the week. Kick the field goal, because Albany State will. Kick the field goal. That's all I got to say. Arielle, tell us about your game of the week.
It was so much shade, but so much realness again, but it's true. I guess we're both going home in our games of the week. I will be watching AT versus Norfolk State. It wasn't a really nice schedule, which will tell you guys all the games that are coming up for this week. It wasn't really a great pick. I think that Randall has the pick to see, and I just willingly gave it to him without even looking. But we're in this. I think A&T has it. A&T's next 3 games actually are this game should be pretty easy, but you know, A&T knows how to mess up a lead, and I'm hoping that when they've gone back to MEAC play and some SWAC teams they've won, and I think beating Campbell was a real confidence booster. But we'll see if their inconsistencies can hold against Norfolk State. But that's my game of the week. Like I said, you have the one that if I would have looked at, I probably would have snatched from you.
Yeah, FAMU Southern is what I'm looking at for D1. Really because of the rivalry, and I want to see Southern bounce back. They laid a goose egg at Jackson State, you know, so like FAMU isn't vulnerable anymore. They started off, you know, with ineligible players and a lot of issues, but they hired their new AD that starts in January. They started getting some good wins. They beat Alabama A&M, you know, so I think that they're trying to get back to the playoffs, which it looks like they might, because Jackson State is definitely going to make the Celebration Bowl, and they might go undefeated in conference play. So Jackson State is probably going to go to the Celebration Bowl, and FAMU is going to be, you know, the SWAC representative once again in the playoffs, and they want to do better, especially with Isaiah Land. You want to see him get drafted, so you want to see him have those moments where people see his play, the scouts come out to see him. So, you know, I just want to see a good game. Like Southern and FAMU is a huge rivalry that dates back like decades, especially in the 90s. They went back and forth. So I just want to see a good game. And shout out to Xavier Smith. Xavier Smith, he's the star wide receiver for FAMU. How about this, Arielle? Real quick, I was a reporter, quote unquote, for ESPN Campus Connections in 2018. So Fort Valley played FAMU, and we got blown out. They set a record on us in field goals. It was crazy. And I was trying to get, you know, an interview. I was trying to interview Coach Simmons, or I was trying to interview somebody to sort of put a point on my package, right? Because FAMU won. Because I had to switch up the whole entire thing. Because I was like, FAMU stole the show. So I'm like, I need to find somebody to interview. So it was this guy. He had no shoulder pads on, nothing. And I said, hey man, how you doing? Hey, listen, congrats on the win. Can I get an interview with you? He was like, yeah. So I asked him, how does it feel to win your first game? He said, basically, it ain't no fans like Rattle Nation fans. It feels amazing. And I put it in the package. Howard, that was Xavier Smith. And I realized that I'm like, this dude looks familiar. And I look back at the package, I'm like, that's Xavier Smith. And I just said his name, like I said, freshman wide receiver, Xavier Smith. So I met Xavier Smith. You know what I mean? So, you know, and that's in the vault. I might run down HBC League Pass. It's in the vault, man. This is last game, you know, in Bragg's Memorial Stadium. Hopefully he gets some draft consideration, maybe the XFL, USFL. He's so talented. I want to see him go and play professionally. But it's just crazy how things work. I've been doing this for a minute. I'm getting old, man. I'm coming to OG out here in this HBC media thing. But nothing like the real OGs like Eric Moore, Stephen Gaither. I ain't nothing like that, but I met Xavier Smith, so I feel special. But let's talk about the games that are coming up on this weekend. We're going to go on and close things out. So on Thursday, Mississippi Valley State University is playing Alabama A&M. On Friday, a big SWAC matchup. Prairie View A&M plays Alcorn. On Saturday, Bowie plays Lincoln University of Pennsylvania. You have Tuskegee playing Miles. You have Morgan State playing Stony Brook. You have Allen playing Benedict, a big rivalry game that's coming back. You have Central State playing Kentucky State. You have Chowan playing Elizabeth City State, like I spoke about. You have Hampton playing William and Mary. You have Shaw playing St. Augustine's. You have Edward Waters playing Atlantis. You have Livingstone playing Johnson C. Smith. You have South Carolina State playing Delaware State, which should be a really good matchup. You have North Carolina A&T playing Norfolk State. That's Arielle's game of the week. We have Virginia State playing Virginia Union. That is a big rivalry matchup. You have North Carolina Central playing Howard, which is going to be interesting as well. Grambling's playing University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff. You have Albany State playing Fort Valley in the Fountain City Classic. You have Morehouse and Clark Atlanta playing each other, which is a big rivalry matchup. You have Fayetteville State playing Winston-Salem. You have Bethune-Cookman playing Alabama State. You have Tennessee State playing Southeast Missouri State. Savannah State is closing out their season against Lane College, which has been a really great offensive team this year. You have Texas Southern playing Jackson State. You have FAMU playing Southern. We just spoke about that. So a lot of great football going on in D2 and also in D1. So it's going to be a lot of great stuff to look at. So Arielle, where can we find you on social media?
You can find me on Twitter at @Screery__, or check out my website at theunexopinion.weebly.com.
Most definitely. You already know where to find us. You can find us on HBCU League Pass Plus, channel 201. Make sure to subscribe to our podcast feed, HBCU Pulse Radio, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Follow at HBCU Pulse on YouTube and Instagram, the HBCU Pulse on TikTok and Twitter. And one last thing, 3 things. Make sure to vote, because voting is coming up. But also, rest in peace to Takeoff, Amigos. That hurt my soul for real, like real talk. And rest in peace. Yes, it hurt my soul a lot, man. I'm telling you. And we got to stop this violence, man. And also, just once again, rest in peace to Eric Moore, the founder of Onnidan. We just read off this schedule from Onnidan. So, sir, we appreciate you and thank you for all you've done for HBCU sports. But thank you so much for tuning in. And as always, we'll see you on the other side.
Like what you hear?
Yeah.
Subscribe to HBCU Pulse Radio on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Also, head to hbcupulse.com to stay up to date on what's going on in the HBCU community. Thank you for listening to HBCU Pulse Radio.